again, I am Chef Heimer with DJ Sweet Kitchen, and today we are making cinnamon rolls. So basically, all we're doing is getting all our ingredients together. So the first half of this procedure is we take a half a cup of milk, a half a cup of water, and 4 tablespoons of butter, and we're going to heat them up to melt the butter and heat up the milk. You can do this 2 ways. You can do it in the microwave, in a microwave safe container, or you can do it on the stove like I did. I just put it on the stove in a pot and let it melt. And then after that is done, you want to set it aside and let it cool down to at least room temperature, because we don't want to kill our yeast. So then the next steps is in the stand mixer. I already have 2 cups and 3/4 cups of flour, of all-purpose flour in here, and also my instant yeast. So I use instant yeast so I can mix it with the flour. And I use 1 package of instant yeast. If you have active dry yeast, you can go ahead and let it bloom with a little bit of water and a little bit of sugar, and then you can add that when you add in your milk mixture. So now the rest of the dry ingredients we want to add. So we have a 1/4 cup of sugar. We're going to go ahead and add that in. And we have a 1/2 teaspoon of nutmeg to our mixture. Now also we want to add in 3/4 teaspoon of salt. So with the salt, I had the yeast already in this bowl with the flour, and so adding the salt in with the sugar did not hurt anything. If you do add it in, you must watch, make sure you don't add your salt and your yeast together, because you will damage your yeast. So now next thing we want to do, we want to add in 1 egg and 1/2 teaspoons of vanilla. We're going to incorporate that. Then with our dough hook, we want to go ahead and mix in our egg mixture into our dry ingredients. That way we can already get it. Now we're going to go ahead and add in our wet ingredients, and we're just going to pour it in like so. And by hand, with my attachment, I can mix in to already get it to form a dough. Now, since it's already, all the ingredients have been incorporated or to form a dough, we're going to go ahead and attach it to our mixer, and we're going to put it on speed 2. So on most stand mixers, especially when you're making doughs on the dough hook attachment, you don't want to go beyond speed 2, because you can damage your dough, your mixer. So we'll let this go for about 5 to 10 minutes. It just depends on how fast your mixer runs at speed 2, or if you are doing or you have other things going on, like making the filling and stuff for the next day. Now, this recipe is a 2-day recipe. So all we're doing today is making the dough. We'll let it rise an hour to 1 hour and 15 minutes. Depends on where you let your dough rise. And then we'll put it overnight in our refrigerator. So while that is mixing, how you know it's ready to be covered and to let it rise an hour is it'll start to slowly incorporate and be more bread dough-like instead of just like a cake batter or a cookie dough. So it'll start to form more gluten, and you'll notice changes in your bowl. Now, because this is a sticky dough, it won't incorporate into an actual ball of dough like you would with regular bread, because it has a lot of sugar and milk, butter. It has a lot of heavy ingredients. So when this is done, you can either leave it in your stand mixer bowl, or you can transfer it to another bowl that you've sprayed, and non-reactive bowl. So a glass bowl, stainless steel bowl. Don't want to use any plastic, because it can adapt your bread dough will take on the flavors of a plastic mold. I usually just leave it in the bowl that I use, and I cover it up and set it aside. So, how we know when it's done, before we put it in the fridge, so it will double in size, and there's another trick you can use. So you can take, if you think it's done enough, you let it set an hour and 15 minutes, it's double the size. You don't really know for sure it's done, so you'll go in and uncover it, and you will take 2 fingers, you will flour them or spray them. It depends on what you want to do. You can spray with cookie spray, or you can use a little bit of flour, and you'll punch your dough with your fingers. Now, if your indentions stay long, the indentions stay long enough to where it doesn't, and you see your indentions in your dough, that means it's proofed, ready to go, and you can put it in the fridge. If it doesn't stay, your finger indentions doesn't really stay, like it comes back quickly to cover back up the dough, that means it's not quite proof, and you let it rise a little bit longer. Okay, so now this dough is ready to go. So I'm going to cover it and then let it rise for an hour. So let it double in size, and then I'm going to put it in the fridge. And the next step will be rolling out the dough to form our cinnamon rolls. And of course, in between this segment and the next segment, I will post pictures of what it's supposed to look like before it rises and after it's risen. So now the next step is we're going to roll out our dough and fill it and roll it up and cut it and place it in our already prepared pan. So basically we let our dough set overnight in the fridge, and of course when it comes out it's going to be a little flat, but that's okay. That's what happens because it's in the refrigerator. So next step is we're going to lightly flour our area that we're going to use, and then of course you can lightly cover up our deal, and then we're going to take our dough out. It's a little rough because it is cold, but that's okay. We can put it back together fairly easy. Now, what you want to do now is kind of knead it to get into the shape that we want to be able to roll it out. And it also will warm up our dough because it has been in the fridge for a while and it's basically cold. But that's okay. If it doesn't come out, they're not going to be perfect, but that's fine too. So basically all I do is I kind of roll it into a log, and then I take my rolling pin. You can use any kind of rolling pin you like. I have the French one, which is, for me, is easier to use. And then you want to roll it out into a 10 by 18 rectangle. Now, it is going to take a little bit for it because it is cold. So basically what I do is once I have it rolled to a certain point, I will let it rest for a couple minutes, and then I can continue rolling out and it'll stretch it back out. So while you do if you do let it rest, you can go ahead and start getting your filling prepared. So basically this is the cinnamon filling. I already have some already made up and they're rising the second rise, but they are apple butter cinnamon rolls. So they have an apple butter filling with some sugar and a little bit of cinnamon. So with this one, the fillings, all we're using is a half a cup of sugar and brown sugar, and we're using 2 tablespoons of cinnamon. You can use any cinnamon that you have. We're also going to have a little bit of vanilla that will mix in, and then we also have 4 tablespoons of melted butter. And all I'm going to do is base it with this butter. If you don't use all the butter, that's fine. We can use it later for our glaze. And then, of course, I'm adding in toasted chopped pecans also to the filling. So while we let it rest, we can continue rolling it out. Now, normally, you would go ahead and preheat your oven, but I wait to preheat it until actually I get this rolled out, filled, shaped, cut, and then put that in the pan. And I put the pan, cover it with a towel or plastic bag, whatever you use to rise your dough, help rise your dough, cover it with. You don't want to use too much plastic wrap because they are going to get bigger. So I tend to use a towel or a plastic bag, and it gives it more space. So what we do is we use the heat from the oven while it's preheating to let our rolls rise. And so we almost basically have it to the shape that we're wanting it. If you don't quite get it all the way to that rectangle, that's fine. I never do, and so, but this recipe is supposed to make 12 rolls. Sometimes I get 12, sometimes I just make them really big, and I get 6. So it varies. If I let this rest a little bit longer, I could get it rolled out into what I really want it to be. But that's fine. I'm making real jumbo rolls. So basically you take your melted butter, and we're going to base all the way on our dough. That way it's completely buttered. I use melted butter because it's easier than using just softened butter, because it gives you more coverage of what you're doing and more coverage of your sugars and cinnamon. So go ahead and mix up your white and brown sugar together. That way it's still, and then we'll sprinkle it on top of our butter and it'll stick. That's alright. If you make a mess, that's fine. You can clean it up later. And you can pat it down to get it. And we're going to add in some cinnamon. So the cinnamon I use is the Vietnamese cinnamon. So it's from Vietnam. It is a stronger cinnamon, so I have to be careful with it. And then of course I'm going to add in my toasted chopped pecans to the middle here. And then of course my vanilla. So with my vanilla, you can either do two options. You can add it into your melted butter to mix it in and make, vanilla in your butter, or you can do what I do. I basically just pour it a little bit across the middle of the dough, and so when it rolls up, it will all be together. So basically now we're ready for it to roll. So I basically take this, I'm going to have to move a little bit, and flatten one end here. And then we're going to roll it into a log. And try to get it as tightly rolled up as you can. That way there's no gaps. And of course while you're doing that, it will stretch out a little bit more so you can have more space. And then I usually flip it over and I try to seal up the edges so that way they're sealed up together. Now, our dough is ready to cut. Now, because when we rolled it up, it stretched out, I can get a little bit more out of it. So, to cut it, it depends on how big you want your rolls to be. So, if you're going for jumbo size, you will cut less. If you're going for the actual 12 rolls that this recipe makes, then that's fine. So, I usually start in the middle. So, I cut it half, and then I take a third of that on each side. And then I will cut halves out of those. And I end up with 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. I got 8 out of this one. But that's fine. I want them a little bit bigger. But who doesn't love really jumbo size cinnamon rolls. So now we already put them in our pan. So you take any pan you have. I've sprayed it with spray, or you can use the excess flour on this. That's fine. So I put it in the pan. I flatten it down a little bit. That way they will, and if you have to seal up the edges a little bit more, that's fine. If you lose some of your ingredients, like your filling, that's fine too. You can always put it back in, like the pecans and stuff, I can put it back in. Or if they come apart, that's fine too. You could always just use it for a tester. So basically that's our cinnamon rolls. Now all we're going to do is we're going to cover them and let them rise for about 30 minutes. And then at 30 minutes, we're going to put them already in our preheated oven at 350 degrees. And then we're going to bake them for about 20 to 25 minutes. And it depends on everybody's oven. And you'll know when they're done is when you cook them. They'll be lightly brown on the top, and the middle part of your cinnamon roll, you can touch it, and if it bounces back, then it's done. And of course you can bake them in any type of pan that you have. So basically that is all it is. Those are ready to go. Now I have some that has already been partially risen, so let's check on those. Okay, so these are the ones I did earlier. So they had basically already started to rise. They are now ready to go into my preheated oven. And that will be all for this. So I won't be able to show you the finished product on this video. So that's fine. I'll attach pictures to this video. That way you can see the finished product and each step of the process. So at the bottom of this video, I'll have the whole recipe from the dough to the actual cinnamon rolls themselves, and at the bottom. So I hope you enjoy this segment on making cinnamon rolls. And so next week's video, we are going to go into candy making. So I am making marshmallows. And so the flavor of marshmallows I'm making is a mixed berry Earl Grey tea. So hope you enjoy, and stay tuned for the next one. So stay safe and healthy, and like and subscribe to my channel, and go to my Facebook page and you find more recipes or menu of items that I sell here in Branson, Missouri. So